My name is Wendy Hayes, and I need to tell you a story that will make you question everything you believe about family, forgiveness, and success. Because there's a lie we hear our whole lives. Family is everything. Blood is thicker than water. In the end, only family matters. You know what I discovered? Sometimes family is exactly what destroys you. And forgiveness? It's not always liberating. Sometimes true freedom comes when you simply stop caring. I was 20 years old when my mom said something that changed my life forever. We were in the kitchen, that huge kitchen in the house of successful doctors, full of expensive appliances and freezing silence. I had just said I was leaving medicine to pursue graphic design, and she, looking at me as if I had announced I was going to become a drug dealer, said, "You're dead to this family. Dead." Not, "I'm disappointed." Not, "Let's talk about this." Dead. As if she could simply erase my existence with a single sentence. And the craziest part? For 3.5 years, that's exactly what she did. They all did. They erased me. Completely. But here's the plot twist nobody expected. While they ignored me, I was building an empire. Alone. Well, not completely alone. I had Jake, my husband, whom they considered a failure because he was a music teacher. Jake, who stayed by my side when my bank account had $23. Jake, who held my hand when I cried on the floor of our tiny apartment because my own family didn't show up at my wedding. That's right. They sabotaged my wedding, left 4 empty seats in the front row, and that pain, that humiliation, I turned it into pure fuel, into fiery determination, into the most satisfying kind of revenge there is, absolute success. 3 years later, my company was making over $2 million a year. I had a Tesla, a penthouse, a closet full of designer clothes. Everything my dad said I'd never have being an artist. And you know the funniest part? They had no idea. Zero. Because to know how someone's doing, you have to at least care. And they didn't care. Until Forbes ran a story about me. Then, out of nowhere, my phone blew up. "Honey, saw your article. So proud. Sis, always knew you'd be amazing. Can we reconnect? Family is important. Family." That magical word they thought could fix 4 years of cruel silence. But here's what they didn't expect. I was no longer that girl desperate for approval. I was no longer the young woman compulsively checking her phone for messages that never came. I had transformed. And when I found out they were all financially ruined and wanted more than $600,000 from me, man, that's when the real show began. The kind of show you don't forget. The kind of revenge that doesn't involve screaming or low blows, but something far more devastating, absolute indifference from someone who used to beg for scraps of attention. Stick with me, because this story will make you laugh, cry, and most importantly, rethink everything about forgiveness, family, and the true meaning of winning in life. You know that feeling of never being good enough? Of looking around the dinner table and realizing you're the flaw in the perfect equation? That's exactly how I, Wendy Hayes, felt for 20 years of my life. My family was the kind that ends up in medical magazines, you know? Those features about dynasties of success, where everyone wears white coats and flashes perfect smiles. My father, Dr. Richard Hayes, was the cardiovascular surgeon everyone wanted an appointment with. My mother, Patricia, ran the pediatrics department at the city's most prestigious hospital. And then there was me, the girl who spent hours sketching in notebooks while my siblings studied anatomy. It was like being a daisy in a garden of red roses, technically still a flower, but definitely not the one they wanted to grow. My brother Derek was always the crown prince of the medical kingdom. By 12, he was already talking about saving lives with that spark in his eyes that made my mom sigh with pride. Olivia, my middle sister, decided to become a lawyer because someone has to handle the family clinic's legal side, as she put it. And me? Well, I liked colors, typography, creating visual worlds that made people stop and think, wow, that's beautiful. But in the Hayes household, art wasn't a profession. It was a hobby for people who lacked real ambition. Every time I showed a project, My dad gave me that polite smile you give a kid who shows you an ugly drawing, you know? Like, "That's cute, honey. Now go study calculus." The rejection didn't come with yelling. It came wrapped in condescending smiles and shoulder pats that hurt more than a slap in the face. D-Day came on Thanksgiving dinner. The house smelled like roasted turkey and suffocating expectations. Derek had just announced he'd been accepted into the most competitive surgical residency program in the country. Olivia had won her first big case. And there I was, 20 years old, about to drop the bomb that would change everything. "I'm dropping out of med school," I said. And I swear you can hear silence when everything falls apart, you know? It's a specific kind of quiet, like the entire universe holding its breath. My dad dropped his fork with a metallic clank that echoed through the dining room. My mom went pale, like when you see an accident happen in slow motion and can't stop it. "You're throwing your future away," my dad said in that grave tone he used with terminal patients. "No daughter of mine is going to be an artist." The word came out of his mouth like a curse. For the next 6 months, I basically stopped existing to them. Not in a dramatic way, with slammed doors and shouting. That would have been better, honestly, because at least it would have been a reaction, you know. It was worse. It was indifference. My mom stopped answering my calls. When I did call, she looked at the phone ringing like it was spam. My dad canceled my college allowance without warning. I found out when my card got declined buying instant noodles. Derek and Olivia? They treated me like an old piece of furniture no one knows what to do with. Ignored until it's time to throw it out. Birthdays went by unnoticed. Christmas was celebrated only with the real family, as my mom once said, not realizing I was listening on the other side of the door. It wasn't punishment. It was erasure. And let me tell you something. Being forgotten hurts infinitely more than being hated. But you know what's funny? When you spend that much time being invisible, you start building your own light. It didn't happen overnight, of course. There were nights crying in the shower so no one could hear. Moments staring at old photos, wondering what I had done so wrong to deserve this. But there was also that day I woke up and thought, screw it. If they won't support me, I'll prove I never needed them in the first place. It wasn't about revenge yet, not at that point. It was about survival. About looking in the mirror and deciding my story wouldn't end with the failed daughter who disappointed her family. I was going to write my own ending, with or without an audience. And little did I know, that was just the beginning of a journey that would take me places I couldn't have imagined, not even in my wildest dreams. Because the truth is, family rejection has a bitter taste that sticks in your throat. You swallow it, but you never fully digest it. It stays there, reminding you that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally set conditions you could never meet without betraying who you really are. And when you're young, that breaks you. But if you survive the initial impact, man, you turn into a diamond. Extreme pressure either makes dust or gemstones. There's no in between. I was about to find out what I was really made of. And it would happen in a moment they considered the most important of my life. A moment they deliberately chose to miss. But that part of the story? Well, that was still to come. And when it did, it changed absolutely everything. I met Jake on a rainy Tuesday, the kind that feels straight out of an indie movie. I was at a cheap cafe near campus, editing a project on my old laptop that took 5 minutes just to open Photoshop. He walked in, soaked, holding a guitar like it was the most precious thing in the world, and ordered a black coffee. No sugar. Our eyes met when he tripped over my backpack. Yes, literally tripped, like a cliché rom-com scene. "Sorry," he said with that crooked smile that could melt anyone. "It's okay, it happens," I replied. Then he saw my work on the screen. "Is that yours?" "It's amazing." 4 words. That's all it took. 4 words my family had never said. We talked for 3 hours. He was a music teacher at a public school. Didn't make much, dreamed big, and saw nothing wrong with being an artist. It was love at first conversation, you know? 18 months later, Jake proposed to me in that same cafe. No fancy restaurant or cringy flash mob. Just us. The same corner. The same scratched-up table. He played a song he'd written for me on his beat-up guitar. "Wendy, you're the melody I didn't know I was looking for. Will you marry me?" My heart nearly burst out of my chest. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We cried, we laughed, and the cafe owner gave us free coffee and cake. It was perfect. Imperfect. Real. Exactly the kind of love my family would despise. And they made sure to prove it. When I called to tell them, my mom picked up for the first time in months. I thought it was a sign, you know? I thought maybe, just maybe, this was the bridge to reconnect us. I was so wrong it still hurts to remember. "Mom, I'm getting married!" My voice sounded like a kid proudly showing a good report card. Silence on the other end. Then, with that kind of coldness only someone who truly wants to hurt you can manage. To who? That little music teacher? Little music teacher. She said it like music was beneath garbage. His name is Jake, Mom. And yes, he's a music teacher. And he's amazing. And he truly loves me. Another pause. Wendy, you've disappointed this family enough. Don't expect us to validate another one of your poor decisions with our presence. Validate. As if my wedding needed some sort of official approval. You're not coming? My voice cracked. We're not. And honestly, you should rethink this while you still can. She hung up. Just like that. No goodbye, nothing. Just the dead beep of the call and me holding the phone like a bomb about to go off. I sent the invitations anyway. Beautiful, handmade by me. Recycled paper, neat calligraphy, delicate illustrations on the borders. 6 months in advance, just like the etiquette books say. Address correct, RSVP and all. Derek texted, "I'll be at a medical conference, impossible to reschedule." Lie. I checked later. There was no conference that weekend. Olivia didn't even bother replying. My dad sent a letter, an actual letter, can you believe it, saying he could not, in good conscience, attend a ceremony that represented the failure of family values. Failure of family values. My wedding, my moment of happiness, reduced to failure. You know when you read something so cruel your brain just refuses to process it? That's exactly what it felt like. I read it 3 times. Cried. Tore it up. Picked up the pieces. Read it again. Cried more. Jake found me on the floor of our tiny apartment, surrounded by shredded paper and tears. "They're not coming," I said. "I know, baby. I know." He just held me. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't say it would be okay. Just stayed there, holding my broken pieces together. The wedding day hit like a runaway train. I woke up at 5 a.m. with my stomach in knots. My dress was simple, bought on clearance because we were broke. But it was beautiful in its own way. My friends turned a community hall into something magical with cheap flowers and Christmas lights. 150 people had RSVP'd. Jake's whole family was there. Grandparents, uncles, even distant cousins he barely knew. Everyone excited, taking pictures, filling the space with life. And on my side, 4 empty chairs in the front row, reserved. With little signs my best friend insisted on making, "Bride's family." Empty. Those chairs screamed my rejection louder than any words ever could. Every guest who walked in glanced at them and quickly looked away, embarrassed. I spent 20 minutes locked in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, whispering, "I can do this." But the truth? I was shattered. When the music started, I had to walk down the aisle alone. No father to give me away. No mother fixing my veil. Just me, my trembling steps, and 150 pairs of eyes filled with a mix of pity and admiration. But you know what saved it all? Jake. At the end of that narrow aisle, Jake was crying like a child. Not out of pity, out of pure love. When I reached him, he whispered, "You're the bravest woman I know." And right there, in that moment, I made a decision. That pain, that humiliation, that deafening absence. I was going to turn it into fuel. I didn't know how or when, but something inside me shifted. It stopped being sadness and became resolve. It wasn't exactly revenge yet. It was a promise. A promise that one day, somehow, they'd realize the size of the mistake they made. And when they did, it would be too late. But at that moment, I had no idea how that promise would one day come true in ways even my boldest dreams couldn't have predicted. The first months of marriage were a strange mix of happiness and financial despair. Jake and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment where the fridge was louder than our drummer neighbor. The faucet dripped an annoying symphony every night. The heater worked when it felt like it, and when it felt like it, was usually never. But you know what that tiny place had? Real love. The kind that didn't demand a degree, a last name, or a bank account balance. We'd split one plate of pasta for dinner and laugh at inside jokes no one else would get. Jake gave private guitar lessons until 9 at night to make up for his pitiful teacher's salary. I worked part-time at a coffee shop, took freelance design gigs until dawn, and tried to build my portfolio. We slept 5 hours a night, but we slept in each other's arms. And somehow, in its own messy way, that made it all worth it. Birthdays were the worst. Not because I was getting older, but because of the deafening silence from my family. You know that silly anxiety of staring at your phone, waiting for someone to remember you exist? Yeah, every March 15th, I'd wake up with that dumb thread of hope. Maybe today, I'd think, but the phone stayed dead quiet. No calls, no messages, not even a generic happy birthday from a distant relative. Jake tried to make up for it. He'd bake cakes that collapsed in the middle, sing off-key on purpose to make me laugh, and give me handmade gifts, like a portrait of me made from old guitar strings. It was beautiful, and it hurt at the same time, because I loved what he did. But a small, pathetic part of me I hated admitting still wanted to hear my mom's voice saying, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." She never did. Not once in 3 years. Christmas was another yearly torture. We'd scroll through social media. Yes, I was masochistic enough to look. And there they were. Derek in a ridiculous sweater, hugging his perfect wife. Olivia holding a glass of expensive wine in front of a 10-foot tree. My parents smiling like a butter commercial. Happy family, complete family, family with no Wendy to ruin the picture. One year, Jake suggested we block them all. "Babe, this just hurts you. Why do you keep looking?" Good question. I guess because we can't stop poking our wounds, right? It's like running your tongue over a sore tooth. You know it's going to hurt more, but you can't resist. So I'd look, cry in the shower so he wouldn't see, and pretend everything was fine. But it wasn't, and that built up pain. It was forming something inside me. Something hard. Something that would eventually explode. It was during one of those lonely Christmases that I got my big break. I was working on a crappy freelance gig, designing a logo for a thrift shop that paid $200 and wanted something like Nike, but original, you know? I was exhausted, frustrated, questioning every life choice. Jake had just left for class. The apartment was cold and silent. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Wendy Hayes?" A male, professional voice. "Yes, that's me. My name's Marcus. I'm the COO at TechRise. Your work came to me through a mutual client. I'm looking at your portfolio and, damn, you're exactly what we need." My heart started racing like a car engine. TechRise, the startup blowing up in Silicon Valley. You're sure you've got the right person? Imposter syndrome hitting hard. Absolutely. We need a full rebrand. Would you be interested? That project changed my life. Literally. I had 3 weeks to create a complete visual identity for TechRise. Logo, color palette, typography, applications, everything. I barely slept. Jake would bring me coffee at 3 a.m. when he found me still working. "You've got this, babe. You're brilliant." And I had to believe that, you know? Because every time I doubted myself, I heard my father's voice in my head. Art isn't a real career. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered those empty chairs at my wedding. This wasn't just work anymore, it was proof. A silent form of revenge against everyone who said I'd never make it. Every pixel I adjusted was a perfectly placed "screw you." Every color palette was an "I can" and "I will." And when I finally presented the final result, Marcus went silent for what felt like 10 endless seconds. Then he said, "This is exactly what I envisioned, but 1,000 times better. Wendy, you're incredible." The logo I created went viral. Like actually viral. 3 weeks after launch, Design blogs were writing about it, people were analyzing it on YouTube, and Twitter threads were breaking down my color choices. Tech Rise grew 300% in 6 months. And Marcus didn't forget who made it happen. He offered me equity. A small slice, about 2%, but still equity. "You're part of this story now," he said. And when the company got acquired by a major player, that 2% turned into $200,000. $200,000. I cried so hard Jake thought something terrible had happened. "Babe, what is it?" We don't have to share instant noodles anymore." It was the first time in years I felt something close to real hope. It wasn't just about the money, it was validation, concrete proof that I'd made the right choice. And it was only the beginning of something much, much bigger than I could have ever imagined. $200,000 changes your life, but not the way Hollywood movies make it seem. We didn't rush out to buy a Ferrari or pop champagne. Jake and I sat at our wobbly kitchen table, the same one we used to fix with cardboard pieces, and started crunching numbers. "What do you want to do?" he asked, holding my hand. I looked at the man who had stood by me when I had nothing, and the answer came out crystal clear. "I want to open my own agency. I want to prove that I can." Jake smiled in that way of his that could light up any room. "Then let's prove it." That "let's" hit me. He didn't say, "You will." He said, "We will." As if my success was his too, you know? And at that moment, I finally understood why my family never accepted Jake. He saw me as a partner, not as a failed project that needed fixing. That bothered them more than anything else. Hayes Creative Studio was born in a tiny office that smelled like mold and had water stains on the ceiling. 10 square meters of pure, delusional optimism. I bought 3 used computers, 2 thrift store desks, and hung a sign on the door with lettering I designed myself. Jake dropped 2 teaching days a week to become my makeshift CFO. "Babe, I don't know anything about finance," he protested. "You understand math, you understand people, and you understand me. That's all we need." And man, he was good at it. I discovered my music teacher husband had a hidden talent for spreadsheets and financial projections. Who would have thought? Sometimes you marry someone and keep discovering layers you never knew existed. While I created, he organized. While I dreamed, he made the numbers work. We were a real team. And that would terrify my family more than anything else. The first year was an emotional roller coaster. Some months I made $80,000. Others, $800. The inconsistency kept me up at night, biting my nails, obsessing over spreadsheets. What if I fail? What if I prove my dad right? Jake would find me like that and speak with that endless patience of his. "Wendy, failure is quitting. Ups and downs are part of the process." He was right. But anxiety doesn't care about logic, right? So I worked like crazy. 12, 14, 16 hours a day. No weekends. No holidays. Every new client felt like a personal victory. Every successful project was a slap in the face of everyone who doubted me. It wasn't healthy. I know. But it was necessary. Because deep down, I wasn't just building a company. I was building an arsenal for the revenge I didn't even realize I was planning. The second year was when things really started taking off. Word of mouth works, and my work spoke for itself. I hired my first employee, Amanda, a freshly graduated designer whose family had also rejected her for choosing art over engineering. We recognized each other instantly. That look of, "I know exactly what you've been through." 3 months later, I hired 2 more. 6 months, 5 more. Suddenly, I had a 10-person team, all with stories like mine. Artists someone had told would never make it. Our office felt like a support group disguised as an agency. We worked hard, laughed loud, and celebrated every win like it was the last. That year, we made $350,000 in revenue. Jake cried when he closed the December spreadsheet. "Babe, you did it." No, I thought. We did it. But it still wasn't over. The third year was the explosion. One client referred me to another, who referred me to another, and suddenly I was pitching to companies I'd only ever seen on TV. One day I looked at my calendar and saw a meeting with Netflix. Netflix. the same company I used to binge watch on that old couch while eating cheap popcorn. And now I was there, presenting a campaign concept to them. Surreal doesn't even begin to describe it. We got the project, and 5 more from Fortune 500 companies that same quarter. I had to rent a bigger office, then an even bigger one, hired 20 people. Added benefits, health insurance, generous meal stipends, performance bonuses, all the things I wished an employer had given me when I was juggling 3 jobs. And the best part? When I closed the year with $1.2 million in revenue, I didn't celebrate the money. I celebrated this thought. My dad said I'd go broke in 6 months. It's been 3 years, and I'm just getting started. Prosperity brought things that used to feel like delusional dreams. Jake and I bought our first real house. Not an apartment, a house. 4 bedrooms, a garden, heating that actually worked. The first night there, we lay on the empty living room floor and laughed until our stomachs hurt. "Remember when we shared ramen?" he asked. "I remember you always gave me the bigger half," I replied, "because you deserved it." We bought a Tesla for me. I'd always dreamed of an electric car, and a Mercedes for Jake, because he deserved luxury too. We finally took the honeymoon in Italy we couldn't afford after the wedding. 30 days of pasta, wine, and just being us, without financial stress. For the first time in years, I actually breathed. And when we got back, I looked at Jake and said, "We did it. Against all odds, we really did it." He kissed my forehead and whispered, "I always knew we would." But neither of us could have imagined that the best, or the most cathartic, part was still yet to come. The Forbes reporter called me on an ordinary Tuesday. So ordinary that I was in an old sweatshirt and fuzzy slippers at the office, reviewing a client proposal while eating a peanut butter sandwich. "Wendy Hayes? This is Jennifer Morrison from Forbes. We're putting together this year's 30 under 30s list, and your name kept coming up in our research." I nearly choked. Literally. I coughed for 30 seconds while Jennifer politely waited on the other end. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" I thought I'd misheard, like when you think someone called your name, but it's just the music playing. Forbes, 30 under 30, media and marketing category. "We're interested in telling your story." My story. Those words echoed in my head like church bells. My story finally mattered to someone other than me. The interview lasted 3 hours. Jennifer wanted to know everything. How I started, the obstacles I faced, what my vision was. And for the first time in years, I told it all. I told her about dropping out of med school, about the family rejection, about juggling 3 jobs, about the wedding my family boycotted, about building an empire from scratch with the man who believed in me when no one else did. Every word came out laced with years of swallowed pain. "Does your family know about your success now?" Jennifer asked. Long pause. "No. We haven't spoken in almost 4 years. They don't know you're making millions? They have no idea." Jennifer wrote something down. I couldn't see what, but from the way she looked at me, that mix of pity and admiration, I knew that detail would end up in the article. And it did, in bold. And that's what detonated the atomic bomb. The piece came out on a Thursday. I woke up to my phone exploding. Like, exploding. 50 Instagram notifications, 80 on LinkedIn, 20 emails from outlets asking for interviews. Amanda called, screaming, "Wendy, did you see it? Did you see it? See what? The Forbes piece, it's out, it's out." I opened the site with shaking hands. And there it was. My professional photo taking up half the screen. Wendy Hayes, 23. The designer who built $1 million empire after her family cut ties. The subtitle hit me in the gut. When her parents boycotted her wedding for disapproving of her choices, she decided to prove them wrong. 3 years later, her agency makes 7 figures, while her family has no idea she exists. 7 figures. Family has no idea she exists. It was right there, written, published, immortalized on the internet forever. And suddenly, my silent revenge wasn't so silent anymore. I read the article 3 times, cried all 3. Because it wasn't just journalism. It was validation. It was the universe saying, "You weren't crazy. They were wrong." The journalist had captured it perfectly. The young woman rejected by her traditional family who built monumental success on her own. The classic underdog story everyone loves. The comments poured in. She's the definition of strength. Her family's gonna regret this. What an inspiring story. I cried reading this. 500,000 views in 24 hours. Then 1 million. Then 2. The article went viral in a way even Forbes' PR team hadn't expected. And with that viral fame came something I hadn't seen coming. My family finally found out I existed, but not the way I'd dreamed as a kid. They found out because I'd become impossible to ignore. The first message came in at 6 a.m. on Friday. My mom. After nearly 4 years of total silence, there it was. Mom. Flashing on my screen. My heart raced like a racehorse. Even after everything, that stupid little part of me, the needy inner child, felt a flicker of hope. I opened it. Wendy, I just saw the Forbes article. I had no idea you'd accomplished so much. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Can we talk? Proud. Now she was proud. Not when I graduated with honors in design. Not when I got married. Not when I opened my company. Now, when money was involved. When there was public prestige. When ignoring me was no longer an option, because half the internet was talking about the rejected daughter who made it. Jake walked into the room and found me staring at my phone like it was a venomous snake. It's her, isn't it? He knew that look on my face. Yeah. So what are you gonna do? Good question. What was I going to do about the woman who once said my marriage was a disgrace to our family values? I didn't reply right away. I stared at that message for hours, showed it to Jake. To Amanda. To my therapist. Yeah. Years of family rejection will land you in therapy. Everyone had an opinion. Ignore her. Be polite. Tell her to shove it. But you know what I realized? For the first time in 4 years, I was in control. I got to decide whether to respond. I had the power. And that power? It felt better than any number in my bank account. Because the truth is, revenge isn't always about dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's just about having the option to ignore the people who once ignored you. It's reading Can We Talk? And thinking, oh, now you want to talk? Interesting. It's holding that power in your hands and deciding, consciously, what to do with it. And I hadn't decided yet. But one thing was certain. If I did respond, it would be on my terms. Entirely on my terms. And they were about to learn that the rejected Wendy no longer existed. After my mom, it was like a dam burst. Derek messaged at 8 in the morning. Sis, saw your name in Forbes. Always knew you'd be amazing. It's been a while. Want to catch up? Always knew. The audacity of that line made me laugh nervously. The same brother who deleted me from every social network, who didn't even RSVP to my wedding, now always knew I'd be amazing. Olivia was more subtle, more calculated, typical lawyer. Wendy, congratulations on your achievement. I saw what you built. It's really impressive. Family is important, isn't it? Maybe we could reconnect. Family is important. Funny she remembers that now. It wasn't important when they left me to cry alone on 3 birthdays in a row. But when millions are involved, suddenly family becomes top priority. The hypocrisy tasted like expired medicine. My dad took the longest. 5 days after the article, he called. He didn't send a message like the others. He actually called. I was in a meeting when Dad popped up on my screen. My stomach flipped. I apologized to the clients and answered shaking. Hello? My voice sounded weird, thin, like when you're scared but trying to hide it. Wendy, it's your father. As if I didn't know, right? As if that deep voice hadn't echoed in my head 1,000,000 times saying, you're throwing your future away. Hi, Dad. Awkward silence. Then, I saw your piece. Impressive what you've built. Impressive. Not, I'm sorry I was a terrible parent. Not, I was wrong to reject you. Just impressive, like he was commenting on the weather. Thank you, I answered, because manners sometimes win over rage. We need to talk, in person. There are family matters that require discussion. Family matters. What an interesting euphemism for, we want your money. The messages kept pouring in. Uncles who never called. cousins who had blocked me, even my mom's friend who once said I had wasted potential, showed up on my Instagram with, "I've always followed your journey." Lies. Everyone lying so blatantly. And the worst part? You could see the formula in every message. 1. Generic praise for success. 2. Nostalgic reference to family. 3. Suggestion to reconnect. It read like a telemarketing script. Jake read the messages over my shoulder and made sarcastic comments. "Look, your cousin who called you a failure wants coffee. Your aunt who said design isn't a real career wants an update." We laughed, but it was that bitter laugh that hurts in the throat, because deep down it stung. It hurt to realize 4 years of silence could be broken so easily, just because I had money now. What kind of love arrives attached to a dollar sign? Amanda came into my office one day and found me on my 15th message. "Are you going to reply to any of them?" I sighed. I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them all to go to hell. The other part, I don't know. There's still that pathetic little kid inside me who wants their approval. She sat on the edge of my desk. "Can I tell you something? As someone else who was rejected by their family?" I nodded for her to continue. "Approval that comes after success isn't real approval. It's opportunism. You don't need validation from people who only value you when you're useful." That hit me like a punch to the gut. She was right. Of course she was. But knowing it intellectually and accepting it emotionally are two completely different things, right? It's like knowing chocolate is bad for you, but eating it anyway because the temporary taste is worth the guilt afterward. I knew they were opportunistic, but it still hurt. I still pathetically wanted them to want me for who I was, not for what I had. One night while we were eating Thai food in the living room of our new house, Jake suggested something. "What if you replied?" I looked at him like he'd suggested I skydive without a parachute. "Reply? Are you crazy?" He gave that enigmatic smile of his. "Listen, they want to talk, right? They want to reconnect. I'll bet my guitar they want more than that. They want money, investments, something." I took a sip of wine. "Continue. What if you let them show their true intentions? What if you give them just enough rope to hang themselves?" I saw where he was going. And honestly, the idea was too tempting. Because blind revenge is satisfying, but calculated revenge? Revenge where you let the person fully reveal themselves before you pull the plug? That's art. That's poetry. So you're suggesting I toy with them? I'm suggesting you find out exactly who they are now, then decide what to do with that information. I thought for 3 days. Reread every message, analyzed each word, every comma. I came to a conclusion. I would reply, but not the way they expected. Not with the anxiety of an abandoned daughter desperate for crumbs of attention. I would reply as a successful CEO who had total control of the situation. I grabbed my phone and typed to my mom. "Hi, Mom. Long time. Maybe it would be good to talk. How about dinner? You can arrange it with Dad, Derek, and Olivia. Next week, Saturday, 7 p.m. Send me the address." Short, polite, emotion-free. No, "I miss you," or "thank you for reaching out." Just scheduling a meeting like you'd set up a business appointment. The response came in 2 minutes. "Wonderful, dear. How about here at our house? I'll make your favorite dish." Favorite dish? She remembered. I doubted it. But fine. I would go to that dinner. I would bring Jake. I'd be well-dressed, successful, and completely ready to find out exactly what those people wanted from me. And when I found out, well, then the real show would begin. Jake hadn't been comfortable with the idea from the start. "Babe, I know you want closure, but these people hurt you deeply. I'm scared of what that dinner might do to you." He was lying in bed, watching me pick out clothes like I was choosing armor for battle. And honestly, that's exactly what it was. A psychological war disguised as a family reunion. I need to know, Jake. I need to look them in the eye and see if there's even a trace of genuine remorse, or if it's all about money. He sighed. "And if it's just about money," I stopped rummaging through the closet and looked at him. "Then I'll finally have the confirmation I need to close that door for good. No guilt. No what if." He got up, came over, and held my face with that gentleness only he has. "Then I'm going with you. And if at any moment you want to leave, we leave. No explanation, no manners, nothing. We just walk out. I loved this man for that, for protecting me without suffocating me. But before the dinner, I needed information. I wasn't walking into that house blind. I called Marcus, an old TechRise client who had become a close friend. I need a weird favor. He laughed on the other end. Wendy, you helped me build a billion-dollar company. No favor is too weird. I need someone to investigate my family. Discreetly. Financial situation, debts, lawsuits. Anything public I can legally access. Silence. Are you okay? Is something wrong? No. They might be. And I need to know before I see them for the first time in 4 years. Marcus knew my story. He'd read the Forbes article like everyone else. I get it. I know someone. Ex-investigative journalist, now does consulting. Discreet, efficient, works strictly with public records. Nothing illegal. Perfect. 2 days later, a 15-page report landed on my desk. And man, it was like opening Pandora's box. My dad's clinic was sinking. Not like profits down this year sinking. More like Titanic hitting the iceberg sinking. The report showed over $800,000 in accumulated debt. Outdated equipment he refused to replace. Young doctors choosing modern hospitals over his old-school practice. Patients leaving for competitors. In the last 18 months, 3 malpractice suits, none successful, but the legal costs were astronomical. My father, the great Dr. Richard Hayes, was going under, and probably desperate. I read it 3 times trying to feel something. Pity? Satisfaction? But all I felt was nothing. Like I was reading about some random stranger. Because after 4 years, that's what he basically was. A stranger who happened to share my DNA. Derek was even worse. My perfect brother, the rising star surgeon, had invested $200,000, probably borrowed, in a telemedicine startup that went bankrupt in 6 months. The partners disappeared. The money evaporated. Now he was drowning in over $150,000 in credit card debt. The perfect wife? Filed for divorce 3 months ago. Apparently, living with a broke, stressed-out man wasn't as glamorous as she'd imagined. Derek was renting a 1-bedroom apartment. The same Derek who used to post photos from fancy restaurants and European trips had lost everything, and I couldn't feel sorry for him. I tried. I really did. But the image of him claiming to be at a medical conference on my wedding day burned brighter than any empathy. Sometimes people reap exactly what they sow, you know? And Derek had sown indifference. Now he was harvesting loneliness. Olivia was the most shocking surprise. My lawyer sister, always so composed, so calculated, had been fired from her prestigious firm. Reason? Negligence in a major case that cost a client millions. The client sued not just the firm but her personally. $80,000 in legal fees to defend herself. And she lost. Lost the case, the job, the reputation. No big firm would hire her now. She was handling small cases, divorces, neighbor disputes. Her ego shattered, her career ruined. And again, I tried to feel something beyond clinical detachment, but I couldn't. Because Olivia had had multiple chances to be human with me, to answer a text, to show up at my wedding. She chose silence. And now, in her crisis, what was I supposed to feel? Compassion? For someone who never showed me any? The sweetest revenge sometimes is simply being unavailable when the people who abandoned you finally start to sink. I closed the report and looked at Jake. He was reading over my shoulder, mouth slightly open. Wow, they're completely broke. All of them, I confirmed. And the dinner's tomorrow. Jake ran a hand through his hair, that nervous habit he had when processing heavy stuff. Now it makes sense. The sweet messages, the family is important, the perfect timing right after Forbes. They don't want emotional reconnection, Jake. They want a financial lifeline. He hugged me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. So what are you going to do? I looked out the office window, the city lights glowing below. A city where I'd built my empire from scratch, where every building represented a client won, a project completed, a dream realized. I turned to him and smiled. Not a happy smile, but the kind you give when you finally understand the game. I'm going to let them ask. I'll listen to every word, every excuse, every lie dressed as family concern. And then, I paused, savoring the moment. Then I'll show them exactly who I've become. And it won't be pretty. My parents' house looked smaller. Or maybe I'd just outgrown it. I parked the Tesla out front, intentionally, right in view, and sat there for 2 minutes just breathing. Jake squeezed my hand. Last chance to back out. We can turn around, order sushi, and watch that dumb show you love. I almost said yes, honestly, but something stronger pulled me. It wasn't curiosity. It was the need for closure, for finally facing those people and knowing they had no power over me anymore. Let's go before I change my mind. We got out of the car. Jake wore a suit, his idea. Let's show them we're not those broke kids they used to look down on. I wore heels, a designer blazer, and perfectly styled hair. Full armor. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The sound echoed like a church bell announcing a funeral. And in a way, it was. My mom opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Wendy, Jake, so good to see you. She hugged me. It was strange, like hugging a store mannequin. No warmth, no familiar scent, nothing that felt like home. She looked older. Deep wrinkles around her eyes, more gray hair than I remembered. Or maybe she'd always been that way, and I'd just idealized her in memory. Hi, Mom. My voice was neutral. Not cold, not warm. Jake offered his hand politely. She gave him that evaluating look I knew too well. The same one she'd use when I brought home a B instead of an A. Jake, finally meeting you for real. For real. As if the wedding didn't count. As if the day she deliberately skipped wasn't the perfect opportunity. He smiled without showing teeth. Yeah, finally. The tension was already thick, and we hadn't even made it past the doorway. The dining room was too prepared. You could tell she'd tried too hard. Candles, fancy tablecloth, the good china that only came out at Christmas. And there they all were. My dad at the head of the table, Derek on one side, Olivia on the other. They all smiled when we walked in. Identical smiles. Practiced smiles. Wendy. Derek stood with open arms. I didn't return the hug. I just offered my hand. A firm, professional handshake. Businesslike. He hesitated, then took it. Confused. Always so professional. He tried to joke. I learned I had to be, I said. Olivia just waved from her chair, smarter than the others. She knew fake affection would be too obvious. My dad got up slowly. He'd aged too. Bad knees. Curved back. Daughter, you look different. 4 years will do that, Dad. Awkward silence. Jake squeezed my hand under the table. Our code for, I'm here. You've got this. Dinner began with painfully shallow small talk. How's the company? Good. How many employees now? 23. Impressive. No one asked how I was. What it was like to build everything from nothing. If I'd struggled. If I'd cried. If I'd ever thought about giving up. They only wanted numbers. Metrics. Proof of financial success. Jake ate quietly, observing everything with that analytical gaze of his. Then my father cleared his throat. The signal. I knew that sound. It meant important speech incoming. Wendy, there's something we need to discuss. As a family. Family. That word again. Like some magic spell that could erase 4 years of abandonment. I slowly set my fork down, looked at him, and waited. Silence is a powerful weapon. It makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to fill it. And he did. The clinic is going through a rough time. The economy, changes in healthcare. You know how it is? No, I didn't. Because for 4 years, no one had told me anything about their lives. But I let him continue. And well, we thought maybe, since you've built such a successful company, maybe you'd consider an investment. Not much. 500,000. A loan, of course. With interest. Totally professional. 500,000. Said so casually, like $20. Derek cleared his throat. And since we're talking finances, I've had a few setbacks. An investment that went bad. If you could lend me, say, $80,000, just until I get back on my feet. Olivia didn't even wait her turn. I'm in a tough situation too. A costly lawsuit. I need good lawyers to rebuild my reputation. About 80 as well. I did the math in my head. $660,000. They wanted $660,000 from me. From the daughter who was going nowhere. The failed artist. The family disappointment. The silence afterward was deafening. Church-level silence. Cemetery silence. The kind that signals the end of something. I just looked at them. One by one. My father, trying to look dignified but with panic in his eyes. Derek, no wedding ring, hands trembling slightly. Olivia, once so confident, now small and scared. My mother, who hadn't asked for anything directly but was clearly part of the plan. And you know what I felt? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no pain, just emptiness. Jake broke the silence. Let me get this straight. You didn't come to our wedding. You didn't send a single message on any birthday. You cut off all contact completely. And now you want over $500,000? My mom tried. Jake, you don't understand. Family is complicated. We made mistakes, but... Mistakes? My voice came out louder than I meant. Forgetting a birthday is a mistake. A silly argument is a mistake. You erased me. Deliberately. Cruelly. And now? I stood up, grabbed my purse. Now I'm going to show you exactly what you lost. And it won't be pretty. I didn't leave right away. That would have been too easy. Instead, I sat back down. Slowly. Deliberately. I opened my bag and pulled out my laptop. The same one that had seen me through sleepless nights, cheap coffee shops, and impossible victories. I set it down on the table between untouched plates of food. Since you want to talk business, let's do this professionally. I opened a presentation. Yes, I had made one. Because if there's one thing years of building a company taught me, it's that visuals speak louder than words. I turned the screen so everyone could see. First slide. A photo from my wedding. A close-up of those 4 empty chairs. You could even read the little signs. Bride's family. Empty. My mom looked away. Too late. Slide number 1, I began, voice steady like an executive in a board meeting. June 3rd, 2021. The day you all decided exactly how much I was worth to this family. 0. I clicked to the next slide. Screenshots of messages. Dozens of them. All from me. Merry Christmas, Mom. Dad, I got my first big client. Derek, saw you got married. Congrats. Read. No reply. The digital record of my erasure. Slide 2. 3.5 years of trying to stay in touch. 3.5 years of being systematically ignored. Derek had gone pale as a ghost. Olivia stared at her hands like they were fascinating. My dad's face stayed blank, but that vein in his neck was pulsing hard. Do you know what it feels like to text your own mother happy birthday and get nothing back? To realize your love is worth less than silence? My voice cracked a little, but I forced it steady. Jake's hand rested on my knee under the table. Anchor. Always my anchor. Third slide. A detailed timeline of my grind. Every job, every freelance gig, every sleepless night. While you erased me, I was building. Worked 60-hour weeks for 2 years straight. Ate ramen for 6 months just to buy a decent computer. Jake tutored until midnight so we could make rent. Fourth slide. Year-by-year revenue growth. Year 1, $80,000. Year 2, $350,000. Year 3, $1.2 million. Year 4, $2.4 million. And the year's not even over. I watched my mom do the math in her head. I saw greed flicker across her face, mixed with a late, hollow regret. But it wasn't real remorse. It was the kind that comes from missing out on profit. And I knew the difference. Fifth slide. Photos of people who did support me. This is Amanda, my first employee. Her family rejected her too. I gave her not just a job, but purpose. Marcus. He gave me my first big chance when I was nobody. Sarah, now my business partner, who believed in me when I barely did. More names. More smiling faces. My chosen family. My real family. These people were there, at my wedding, on my birthdays, when I cried from exhaustion, when I celebrated small wins. They built this with me. And you know how much money they had when they stood by me? I paused. None. $0 and 100% humanity, the exact opposite of all of you. Olivia was silently crying now, tears slipping down her face. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. Revenge only matters if it's complete. 6th slide. A live bank statement. Ridiculous numbers. More zeros than anyone at that table would ever see in their own account. $2.3 million sitting in the business account right now. You know what I'm going to do with it? I looked at each of them. My dad had gone pale. Derek stared at the table. My mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I'm doubling every employee's salary next week. I'm donating $500,000 to an organization that helps young artists rejected by traditional families. I'm buying a beach house for Jake's parents. The ones who treated me like their own from day one. The ones who showed up at my wedding. The ones who call me every Sunday just to ask about my week. I closed the laptop with a sharp snap that echoed through the room. And for you, for this family that asked me for $660,000 after 4 years of silence, I stood. Jake stood too. For you, I have exactly what you gave me. Nothing. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I pulled out an envelope. Thick, heavy, and set it down on the table with controlled force. This is a check for $20,000. Roughly the cost of every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and birthday dinner I missed. Consider the family debt settled. We're even. You owe me nothing, and I owe you nothing. My mom tried to speak, but I raised my hand. No, you listen now. I came here tonight hoping, maybe, for a real apology, maybe for remorse. But all I found was greed dressed up as family. You didn't lose a rich daughter. You lost a daughter, period. You lost the chance to see her build an empire. You lost seeing her marry an incredible man. You'll lose seeing her have kids. You'll lose everything. And then I smiled. For real this time. You know the best part? I don't feel anything anymore. Not anger, not pain, not love. You're strangers to me now. And this, I nodded at the envelope, is the last interaction we'll ever have. Forever. I took Jake's hand, and we walked out. No turning back. No final glance. Just walked away. And for the first time in 4 years, I breathed completely free. The car stayed silent for a full 5 minutes after we left. Jake was driving, and I stared out the window, watching my parents' house shrink in the rearview mirror until it became an invisible dot. And then it started. Not the delicate movie-style crying. It was that ugly, cathartic, full-body sobbing. Hiccups that hurt in your chest. Jake pulled the car over to the shoulder, turned it off, and just held me. He didn't say, "Stop crying," or "It's okay." He just held me. And that was all I needed. I cried for 20 minutes. For the child who just wanted to be seen. For the teenager who just wanted to be accepted. For the young adult who built an empire just to prove her worth. I cried for lost time and for the conversations we would never have. And when I stopped, when not a single tear remained, I felt something strange. Lightness, like I had carried a backpack full of stones for years, and finally had permission to drop it on the ground. "It's over," I whispered. "Really over." Jake kissed my forehead. "It's over, love. You're free now." 6 months passed like a strange fog. My family tried to reach out 3 more times. My mother sent a 12-page handwritten letter apologizing. Beautiful, well-written, completely empty. Because a real apology comes with changed behavior, not polished words when you need something. Derek showed up at my office. Security didn't let him upstairs, but he waited in the lobby for 2 hours. I sent Amanda down with a simple message. Wendy doesn't have a brother. Olivia tried the lawyer approach. She sent a formal letter proposing a family reconciliation agreement with terms and conditions. I tossed it in the trash without even fully opening it. Jake asked if I regretted being so harsh. No, I replied without hesitation. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a bank. And I'm not a financial institution. I'm a human being, and human beings deserve unconditional love, not love when it's convenient. He nodded with that proud smile that melted me every time. But you know what blossomed in the empty space my biological family left? Real life. A life full of purpose and genuine love. We expanded the company to Los Angeles and Miami. We hired 15 more people, all with rejection stories similar to mine. Our office became like a refuge for wounded artists the world told were not enough. We didn't just give jobs, we gave family. I made a point of celebrating every employee's birthday as an official event. Cake, decorations, everyone singing happy birthday off-key. Because I remembered how it hurt to be forgotten, and no one on my team would ever feel invisible. Amanda became the creative director. Marcus invested in the company and became an advisor. Sarah, who started as a freelancer, was now a partner with 20% of the shares. We built not just a company. We built a movement of people who turned rejection into fuel. And that's priceless. The vow renewal happened exactly 6 months after that disastrous dinner. 5 years of marriage. Jake suggested something small, just the two of us. But I wanted differently. No, I want big. I want a real celebration. I want to show the world, and myself, that we made it. We booked a 5-star resort. 200 people. Not 150 like the first wedding. 200. The entire team. Clients who became friends. Jake's parents in the front row of honor. The same front row that was empty 5 years ago. This time there were 3 empty chairs too, but not out of rejection. Out of choice. Silent, powerful revenge. Each chair had a little sign. Reserved for those who never showed up. People passing by read it and understood. Some even took photos. It went viral on Instagram. Not because I wanted attention, though I won't lie. It was satisfying. But because it resonated. It touched a universal wound of family rejection. The ceremony was everything the first one couldn't be. I walked in on Jake's father's arm. He cried harder than I did. "Thank you for letting me do this," he whispered. "Thank you for being the father I needed," I replied. Jake was at the altar with that same loving look from 5 years ago. But there was something more now. Pride. Pure pride in seeing the woman I had become. Our vows were different this time. Jake, 5 years ago I promised to love you in poverty and in wealth. Today I can say, we faced both, and you stayed. When my family rejected me, you chose me. When I doubted myself, you believed. You're not just my husband. You're my family, my home, my safe harbor. And I promise for the next 50 years to choose you every single day. Just as you chose me when I had nothing to offer but wild dreams and instant noodles. Not a single dry eye in the audience. Not mine. And then came the surprise I had prepared. I had a timeline projected on the wall behind the altar. 5 years of photos. Us in our tiny apartment. In the first office with water leaks. Signing the first big contract. Buying the house. Expanding the business. Traveling the world. Every photo a victory against those who said we wouldn't make it. And the last photo? It was us. In front of our new home. My hand gently resting on my slightly rounded belly. Silence held for 3 seconds. Then someone shouted, "You're pregnant?" And the place erupted. Jake looked at me with that, "You didn't tell me," expression, and I whispered, "Surprise." He lifted me and spun me around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." And at that moment, while 200 people celebrated with us, while Jake held me as if I were the most precious thing in the universe, I looked at the 3 empty chairs and thought, you lost all of this. You chose to lose all of this. And this pain, it's no longer mine. It's yours. Forever. So here we are, at the end of this crazy journey that has been my life over the past few years. And I know what you might be thinking. Wendy was too harsh. But they're your parents. Everyone deserves a second chance. What if they were truly sorry? And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I was too harsh. But let me ask you this. How many chances do you give to someone who erases you from their life How many times do you accept being treated like an option when you've always treated them as a priority? At what point is it okay to say, enough? Because there's a huge difference between forgiveness and being an emotional doormat. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back into your life to hurt you again. Forgiveness doesn't mean funding the irresponsibility of someone who abandoned you. True forgiveness, at least for me, was realizing that they were flawed, broken humans, incapable of unconditional love. It was accepting that. It was stopping the expectation that they would change. And it was moving forward, building a life so amazing that their absence simply stopped mattering. That's forgiveness. Not forgetting. Not forced reconciliation. But peace with what happened, and the freedom to live without that weight. And look, I'm not here telling you to cut your family off abruptly. I'm not a relationship expert or a therapist. But here's what I am saying. If there's someone in your life, family, friend, partner, whoever, who only shows up when you have something to offer, who only values you when it's convenient, pay attention. Because true love doesn't come with an entry fee. True love doesn't come with a list of conditions. True love was there at your wedding when you were nobody. True love was there on your birthdays when you were broke. True love was there at 3 a.m. when you called crying. And if it wasn't, then it's not love. It's interest. And interest disguised as love is one of the most dangerous and destructive things there is. My revenge wasn't yelling, cursing, or publicly exposing them. It was simply living well. It was building a chosen family so strong that my biological family became irrelevant. It was having a baby who will grow up surrounded by real, unconditional love. It was waking up every day next to a man who chose me when I had nothing, and continues to choose me now that I have everything. It was looking in the mirror and loving who I see. It was turning every "you can't" into "look at what I did." And honestly, there's no better feeling in the world than proving that the people who underestimated you were completely, absurdly, spectacularly wrong. So I want you to do something right now. Pause the video for a second and think, who in your life makes you feel small? Who only shows up when they need something? Who made you feel like you had to be someone else to deserve love? And now think, what are you building despite these people? What dreams are you putting on hold because you're afraid of disappointing someone? What amazing version of yourself is trapped because you're still seeking approval from those who will never give it? I want you to know one thing. You don't need anyone's permission to be extraordinary. You don't need validation from those who reject you. You only need the courage to keep going when everyone tells you to stop. And look, I know my story is extreme. I know a lot of people will say, wow, what a horrible family. And yeah, they were. But it's not about them. Never was. It's about what you do with rejection. Do you let it define you, or do you use it as fuel? Do you stay stuck in the pain, or do you turn it into power? I chose the second option, and it wasn't easy. There were nights I wanted to give up. There were moments I wanted to call, crying, begging them to accept me. But I didn't. And today I look back and thank every closed door. Because it forced me to build my own doors. Bigger doors. Better doors. Doors that only open for those who truly deserve to enter my life. So let me ask you again. And this time really think about it. Are you living the life you want, or the life others expect from you? Because in the end, when you're 80 looking back, what will matter? Approval from people who never supported you, or the fact that you had the courage to be authentically you, no matter the cost? I already know my answer. And you? What's yours? If this story touched you in any way, if you related to any part of it, leave a comment below. Share your story. Share what you're building despite those who doubted you. Share your silent revenge. Because I promise you, you're not alone. There are thousands of people here who were also rejected, also underestimated, also called crazy for dreaming big. And we need to create this community of people who turned pain into power, who turned rejection into personal revolution. So come on, comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now and hit the bell. Because every week I bring real stories of people who won when everyone bet against them. Stories of revenge of the most satisfying kind. Absolute success against all odds. And remember, they ignored you when you were a promise. Don't let them celebrate when you become an achievement. True success isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about building a life so good that you forget entirely about who you need to prove anything to. See you in the next video. And until then, keep being extraordinary, especially when no one's watching.